Welcome back to another episode of Cloud Native Talks podcast, and we today have Priyanka. Has done a lot of things. She has been part of a lot of teams and working towards the Kubernetes world, and also we will explore a lot around that. So, without wasting time, just move forward to Priyanka, and she will explain like what she do and where she is working currently and how she got into this. So, yeah, Priyanka.
Uh, Thank you, Rohit, for inviting me. And yes, also a big thank you for giving that introduction about me. I can add a bit. So currently, I work at SUSE professionally. At work, my position is Kubernetes Integration Engineer. As part of my work at SUSE, I'm a maintainer of Kubernetes packages on one of the SUSE open source Linux distributions called OpenSUSE Tumbleweed, and I also manage and package or maintain packages for few SUSE Linux enterprise products, Lee and SLIS. So that's my job, my work at SUSE. In the upstream Kubernetes project, apart from being this cycle being the release lead for Kubernetes 1.29, um, I do a few other things as well. I am the technical lead for special interest group contributor experience, which is one of the special interest group in Kubernetes project, mainly focused on bringing and improving and bringing processes around um, improving contributor experience overall for the Kubernetes community and the contributors, um, experienced newcomers, everyone. I'm also one of the GitHub admins for Kubernetes and sub-project organizations, so help in the day-to-day GitHub operations and anything around that with respect to Kubernetes projects. That's all about what I do at work and in the upstream project right now.
Yeah, amazing. Like you have been part of Kubernetes for a long time, and you are also the admin for the project. But guys, don't go and DM her about let us in the Kubernetes world directly on the PRs and stuff. That is not easy like that. But yeah, she will surely guide you through the process, like how you should start with the Kubernetes contribution, what actually is open source, and how you should get into this. And yeah, let's go in this only, right? Priyanka, tell me like how you got started with open source and how you thought like yeah, Kubernetes is something I'm passionate about and I should contribute to it.
Um, well, I have a bit of a history before Kubernetes as well. Kubernetes was not the first project I started with. Actually, the my beginning, my journey with open source is without any project in general. I started when I was in second year of my college. I think second year, early third year. I don't recall correctly. 2018 sometime. I was introduced to this community called DGPLUG. It stands for Linux Users Group of Durgapur. Um, they had a summer training, something called an online summer training, where mentors who were actually the people holding or conducting that training were people uh, from amazing open source project, and the the core of that summer training was not to, let's say, what we understand open source today, start contributing. No, that was not the core behind that summer training, but the ideology was to bring people and make them understand what open source is in terms of community values, what it is like to communicate and meet people online, and how to do it well, how to do it with creating this community or respectful environment which is open to everyone, which is open to suggestions, opinions from everyone. So just to create, how to create that safe and sound environment that eventually becomes an open source community. uh, so that's was my beginning with open source in general. But because the mentors there were part of these amazing open source projects, one of the later focus of that training was to also introduce with few basic toolings like uh, what it is, what Git is, or what GitHub is. Uh, Even before that, what Linux is, how to install Linux on your operating system, how to maybe navigate around the Linux terminal, all those very basic things, so that somebody can get started with setting up their environment and understanding how in general open source project work, or how do people collaborate. Things like mailing lists, how to communicate on mailing lists, or how to communicate on open discussion forums. So all that was the focus, and that gave me a bit of understanding on, okay, it's not a big gated thing that no, people need to first prepare and be very technically sound to maybe start being part of any community. That's not the case. You can be part of any community just by being there, just by listening to people, maybe appreciating them if any of your any of their advice or suggestions helped. So that's what I did in 2018 as part of that summer training. While I was there, I was while I was working with these mentors from projects, I got opportunity to work on some DevOps or sysadmins related projects. I got introduced to few tools like Ansible, um, tools like web servers, how to configuration management tools, some things like that. And one of the opportunity I got was Debian. So part of that community was a maintainer, a Debian maintainer, or a Debian packager at that point, um, who was actually going to be a mentor in one of these mentorship uh, programs we have called Outreachy. So I was working on Debian with them outside that Outreachy project, and I realized, okay, this project is going to be part of Outreachy at some point, and I thought, okay, I can try for that. Well, I did not end up doing outreachy with Debian. I ended up doing it with another open source project, GNOME Foundation. But all that mismatched me trying to figure out what project is for me, or where I can maybe learn more while trying to contribute back as well. So that summer training in 2018 leading to outreachy was one of the first things I did as part of my open source journey, I would say. Yeah. How
Yeah.
I ended up into Kubernetes, that's a bit of a
Like,
different story.
yeah.
So after outreachy, I was graduate from my college. I was looking for full time opportunities, and right after outreachy, I think I got into a data ops organization, a startup, where I joined them as a DevOps engineer. So at that point of time, I think we are talking about early 2020 ish. Yeah. Uh, that point of time, I was mostly a user of Kubernetes. So how to consume Kubernetes to build up all these pipelines to deliver applications, or deploy application for customers. That was what I was learning at that point of time. um, but because I had this past experience of being in this open source communities, my inclination was to get into an organization where I could, while I'm working in a company, I could also get opportunities to work on open
I
source
read. Yeah.
projects. Yeah. So I think like some folks, some mentors, I would rather at this point call them friends, um, mentors, friends. They helped me to get some opportunities at Red Hat at that time. So I joined Red Hat as a cloud services SRE in one of the SRE teams for OpenShift dedicated. Um, so I was responsible for maintaining or maintaining reliability for managed services running on top of OpenShift dedicated layer. Um, so that was my work. But again, I was a SRE there. Um, that means my work also required me to work with, or partly interact with engineers who are building these applications that we were responsible to manage. So I started reading Go related code. I started reading or working with Kubernetes or OpenShift flavor of Go related code, and that's how I think I got into that got into the mindset that okay, whatever I'm
Yeah,
doing here, how can I contribute back to upstream? And
exactly.
eventually that will help me learn further, grow up in my career, because yeah, that was something I was doing, not directly for Kubernetes, but I was part of upstream projects in general, and I had seen that growth in my own professional, personal career spectrum, where just being in any open source community where I can just be around people who are building a product, or any software, or in general building a community. How can that help me back? So yeah, I went to Kubernetes. I had mentors, I would say, um, who right away helped me when I joined. So I was talking to Dims at that point, Dims Davanam Srinivas. He helped me. So I went to him, telling him, okay, I have done some work. This is what I have done. I'm familiar with so and so Go code nowadays. I'm working on these things in my work. Um, what can I do with what I know right now? Do you have any opportunities? And um, I think one of the things I learned from him, and in general, watching a few videos, deep dive videos, or in general, being in the community, I realized, okay, if you want to uh, be part of Kubernetes community, join meetings or be in discussions. Be there and then call out that you are there for uh, contributing back. You are a new contributor, but you are happy to contribute back if there is opportunity. So that's what I did. I just joined a few community meetings. I subscribed to a few community meeting calendar, and whatever came up first, I joined that very first meeting. So it happened to be a fortunate opportunity for me. I The first meeting I joined was a Python Kubernetes client meeting from SIG CLI, and it was a very lightly crowded meeting. There were hardly many people in there. So people were triaging issues like these are all the open issues right now. Who want to take up uh, whatever is there? And um, I think some issues were marked as beginner friendly or good first issue. So I also raised my hand, like I can provide some help, though in reality those issues were not like I was not able to solve them right away. It took me a bit of time, but I think at that point of time, because I was working at an organization which was friendly to open source contributions, or appreciative of open source contributions, I could spend time there. So I spent reading the documentation. I spent time finding out what is there to ramp up as a contributor, or maybe things like setting up development environment. And then I went through the existing examples or other documentation, basically what was there for generally for people who want to consume Kubernetes Python client, not right away contribute. So I first tried to see if I'm able to consume it. Do I understand what I'm trying to build? Um, Once I did that, I found out, okay, maybe I can contribute back a few things in these examples or in these documentation, because I, as a consumer, I'm looking for so and so thing. Why can't I contribute back? Why can't I add those things myself, or at least suggest and then work on them? So that's what I did. I did that for a few months, and eventually also went back to the few issues that I took up in the first place, because now that I've spent like a few months on the project, I had better idea. So I had better network at that point of I knew who is the right person to ask questions for so and so things in that project. So that's how I started with Kubernetes. It Dims offered me a few sessions where he walked me through other tools in the Kubernetes project, a few tools on the SIG testing side, just to see how test infrastructure work, how to consume um, statistics coming out of these tests, that this whole big test infrastructure we call PROW. He introduced me to PROW and other user interfaces, and then slowly I started getting into other SIGs as well. I spent some time with SIG Oath. not really doing anything there, just being there in the meetings and consuming what's happening there. I spent some time with SIG testing as well, uh, writing jobs or maybe fixing some of them, or just learning about the tools that needed help. For example, Cube Test 2, Boscos, etc. Um, During this time, I think I applied for the second time to be a release team shadow. I ended up getting selected on for the first time on version 123. So I was selected as an enhancements sub team shadow for 123 release cycle, and then that was a good step for me because I stayed in the release team for a long time then. I was enhancement shadow again for 124, then leading enhancements for 125, 126, 127. I was a release lead shadow, um, and now I am a release lead for Kubernetes 129 cycle. So
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of it. If you want more, I can add about how I got into ContribEx, but that's okay.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. So definitely, like you have covered a lot of things. I didn't have to ask. So moving forward, I would like to ask about new thing which is launched, right? Kubernetes 1.29. So how did you got that picture in mind? Like how that mandala and what was in mind for the contributors to come with this theme for new things, and what are the new changes made in the 1.29? Like we know, like whoever are actively using the Kubernetes or who are going to use Kubernetes, they must have been aware of every versions has a different things. Like previous version has some registry like 1.25 has some registry change, then previous had some new changes. Like in 1.29, what is the major three changes or two changes you should recommend users to check first? So yeah, let's move forward
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah. So I take your question in two parts about the release theme and logo. I'll come to that maybe after because I'm very excited to talk about what's coming in 129 first. So just giving a whole picture, we had 72 enhancements or features. We call them Kubernetes enhancements proposal (KEP). So at the very beginning of the cycle, we had 72 KEPs opted in by the community, which means we were aiming at 72 enhancements for 129 cycle. Uh, as we progressed through the release cycle, we had few milestones like enhancements freeze, code freeze, where if any KEP does not meet a requirement for moving ahead in the release cycle, because maybe some things are still in work in progress and they decided to defer it to next releases. So what we got as the final number is 49 features, which were fully tracked code implemented after code freeze. That's exactly the number of features or improvements that are coming in 129 release.
Wow.
And that's a huge number because we had a few constraints, time constraints this cycle. 129 was a bit of a shorter cycle because KubeCon NA was actually scheduled on week 10, which week 10 usually is a code freeze week. So there is a time between enhancements freeze, like when we are sure these many are tracked for a cycle, these many features keps are tracked for a cycle. Now those are just tracked at enhancements freeze milestone, but now somebody needs to actually code implement them, like actually implement the features that we just tracked. So that time duration is what we called code implementation duration. That finishes as at code freeze milestone. Because KubeCon was at week 10, we had to make the hard decision of moving the code freeze milestone a week earlier, which actually gave people a shorter code implementation duration. And
Exactly.
even after that, we managed to get 49 out of the cycle. I am very pleasantly surprised and grateful for the community, to the community that we all made it happen. We all, as part of release team and entire Kubernetes community, made it happen. uh, Three changes uh, that I would mention. I think the first one is a breaking change. It's a major change. It's an improvement, but some people need to be careful about this incoming change as a user. So this this change, I don't recall the KEP. I think it's KEP 23. Let me I have okay, so it's kept 2395. It's for removing in clouder providers. So what does it means is a bit of backstory. When Kubernetes started Kubernetes as a project started working on integrating with cloud providers. We actually added the integration code, the logic for integrating with cloud provider in the Kubernetes code base itself. But that, as Kubernetes is growing and as cloud providers on their own side are growing, it was a bit of a hard situation to keep managing all those five cloud providers which we added at the very beginning, and also with new incoming cloud providers. Now we have more options than just five in the ecosystem, so it is practically not possible to integrate all those incoming cloud providers and make Kubernetes, let's say, cloud provider agnostic. So the decision sometime in 2018 was taken to start removing this in code cloud provider implementation. There was a KEP that came out of that, KEP 2395. The aim of that KEP, Kubernetes enhancement proposal, is to slowly, one by one, remove this in tree cloud provider implementation. In 126 and 127, I believe, we removed AWS and OpenStack cloud provider implementation from Kubernetes code base. Um, so yeah, those have moved out and are now maintained externally. uh, the motive also not is not just to maintain Kubernetes code properly, but also to make sure the cloud provider also grows, so they are now no longer restricted by Kubernetes release cycle or Kubernetes timelines. They can keep working on their own. um, the people, the user of Kubernetes who are impacted by this change are currently the people who have their cloud Kubernetes environment set up on cloud providers Azure, vSphere, and what is the third one? Let me check super quick. Yeah, so it's Azure, GCE, and vSphere. Why is that? Because among those five cloud providers that were implemented, these three were also there. AWS and OpenStack are also already removed. These three are still there, but as part of 129, what's happening is we are flipping two flags that's going to render any in cloud in tree cloud provider implementation null and void. So there is a flag that's passed. So it is for a Kubernetes admin who actually configures their Kubernetes clusters to interact with cloud provider. They need to pass a flag called cloud provider to Kube API server, and they pass values, or as, let's say, before 129, the way is was to mention in front of that cloud provider flag, use AWS or GCE or so on. But now that particular flag will stop understanding uh, these five implementations right away. The only value it will understand is external. So now, going forward 129, if somebody has their Kubernetes cluster, for example, currently running on 128, which has their API server configured with cloud provider equals AWS, GCE or Azure or vSphere. And if they now decide to upgrade to 129, they will need to take some measures to make sure that cluster does not break, uh, because no longer like Kube API server or Kubernetes cluster will understand the in-tree implementations. I think I'll not go into the technical details of what are the real measures. There is a blog coming out today. We just released 129 last night. So that blog about this particular KEP actually explains what are the different options we have uh, as a admin, cluster admin, to mitigate this problem on Azure, vSphere, and GCE Kubernetes clusters running on these three cloud providers. For any other cloud provider which are outside these five options we talked about, it would not impact any of them because they will start their journey outside the Kubernetes code base only. So yeah, this is one of the major breaking change that's coming out.
Yeah.
Um,
Thanks. Thanks
yeah,
for
I'll
introducing. Yeah.
yeah, I'll. I think I can talk about one more, just looking at the time we have. So there is another. I'm going to talk about a feature that's going to be alpha or has already graduated to alpha in 129. But why I personally feel it's a major change, because this particular feature was requested from the community in general, starting back in 2015. And the discussion started in version 1.17 release cycle. So it's been like more than a decade now. We are talking about a decade in terms of release cycle that we are talking about bringing that feature in. Um, and finally, that's graduated in 129. I'm talking about KEP 1 to, let me check the exact number, 1287. It's in place updates of port resources. Brief is if as a cluster admin, whenever like I have my applications running on pods inside a Kubernetes cluster, and for example I need to update resources, CPU or memory assigned to those applications, those pod containers, I do not want those pod containers to die and restart again when I update those values. Rather, I just want those applications, those pod containers to take whatever new values I'm giving and then stay running. This kind of situation is required. For example, one, my application is running now, there is a too much load, and to handle that load, I need to give more resources. Another case could be my application is running not too under too much load. There is too many resources I've already provided, and I need to cut down on resources to save money. And in any of these cases, I do not want a downtime. I do not want the pod container to die just because I'm making some change in the resources. So this particular KEP is to do that. This particular KEP 1287 in place update of pod resources. The idea behind is to make the pod spec mutable. Earlier, it was immutable. You can't update the resources like CPU and memory without restarting the port. But now, with this alpha feature, right now it's gated behind alpha. Um, but let's say with more improvements and more development on this particular feature, port spec will be mutable, and we'll have other checks as well to make sure we have a resource quality check or quantity check. So this is one of the most anticipated changes coming like after many
Yeah,
many
right.
cycles now.
Yeah, so
uh,
let's move forward to Mandala theme.
yeah, so mandala, well, I wanted, so the theme actually comes out at the last phases, last milestones of a cycle, any release cycle, and it's usually the responsibility of the release lead to come out with a theme. So it was wholly my responsibility to think about something that is justified to how our release went. I felt like I could use mandala. Mandala actually, in its purest form, means universe. And for me, Kubernetes, it's such a huge project, but it's so nicely interconnected. Uh, v- and it has all different parts, but still like they all weave in each other. So it just felt like mandala is a great theme. Uh, I worked with one of another contributors in the project, Mari Jason Braganza, who helped me actually design this logo as well. So big shout out to Mario Jason Braganza and Fibril Ohala. There is a backstory behind the final logo we have. So the mandala art itself, it's from Fibril Ohala. It's a 8 years old art, and we tried to use that art and bring it back to life with putting Kubernetes on it. So we also added a few Easter eggs there just to put touches to our 129 release. So yeah, the whole idea was to bring some theme that involves everybody in the community, not just people on the release team, but people in general who are contributors, community people, who are users, who are supporters of Kubernetes. Just give out uh, something back to them. Talk about this universe we have inside the Kubernetes project. Yeah, that was a
Yeah,
idea.
it was amazing. Yeah, it was amazing. I saw that during Cube Day India. I got that sticker,
Oh,
and
you
in
got
first
it.
view, yeah, in the first view only, I saw like, yeah, this is 1.29
Yeah,
because
yeah,
yeah, there are some Easter eggs.
yeah. So
So
yeah, I brought a few stickers in Cube Day. I think I'll need to get some more. I'm happy people wanted them. So I'm generally very happy. People are like liking the design, like liking the logo and theme of Kubernetes 129. Yeah, it was hard to make out on a sticker, because it's a circular thing. So if I'm not giving it in the right direction, then it's hard to make out there is a 1.29 written there. But yeah, on a screen design logo, it's very much visible. And that was the intention. I at least wanted people who understand Devanagari to understand that there is something there. Yeah.
Yeah,
uh,
amazing work. Yeah, sure.
yeah. The reason why we picked Devanagari was just to have something that becomes part of the design, not something that stand
Exactly.
out right in face. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's why I like the theme very much this time. And thanks for that. Another big change, right? Last time also there was big change, which was discussed from early days about sidecar containers. So yeah, this is also
Mm.
too much big. Yeah, I have also tweeted some of the things. So for the audience, so thing is, this podcast will go out soon. So that time I will have every blogs and everything in place, so I will add that in description. I will also add the Priyanka's various thing, like her profile and how has been contributions. So yeah, if you like this podcast, you should definitely give her follow. And if you want to ask anything about Kubernetes and major to the Kubernetes contribution sides, you can definitely ask the Priyanka. So for the end goal and advice to the audience, so Priyanka, would you like to share some things about Kubernetes future and what you should recommend the new folks who want to get into these contributions of the Kubernetes?
Yeah. Um, I I I think I would start with some some advice for somebody who is actually looking forward to get started. Uh, this is my personal experience, and Kubernetes is a huge project, and a project of this scale, it's a bit overwhelming to start. And that's, if we go with that mindset, it becomes easy. So when, as a newcomer, I'm starting with this project, I will not feel discouraged when I find things that are hard. So I my first advice to anyone who is starting, just know that this is a big project, and there is a bit of a learning curve required to get started with a project that's this big, and it's not stable, it's growing every single day. So there is nobody in the entire Kubernetes project who is aware of every single thing. uh, so that mindset, definitely use that mindset and then get started. Do some work by means, read a lot. Read about uh, I can give you one resource to, like, somebody who is just getting started. Look for a GitHub repository called Kubernetes/community. That should be your very starting point if you are looking at understanding this whole structure of Kubernetes project, how we have divided different parts of Kubernetes project into these groups to make it manageable, to work around different aspects of Kubernetes. So just look for that GitHub repository, Kubernetes/community, and read about different components, the structure of Kubernetes in general. You will also find information like, for these particular groups, I'm talking about groups like SIG stands for special interest group, or WG, working group. You will find information about what these particular SIGs, each of them does, where do they meet, what are their weekly meeting schedules, or what are their agenda, what is the charter of that SIG, what kind of work they do, what kind of sub projects they have. You can also find information like what are the areas where they are looking for help, and make your mind around whatever things you are liking, whatever things you are learning from that reading. Just use that, and then come to meetings, join those meetings, introduce yourself. I would say, for anyone who is just starting, don't feel like you don't, since you are newcomer, you don't know about the project, don't feel y- you would not be able to help anyway. I personally, being a SIG uh, lead now, I know that we need a lot of help, and if somebody just come there and show some real um, uh, 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 how to say, like somebody who is actually doing some work, putting in some work, and then showing, coming back to us whenever we are trying to help them, I
Community
think
is
those are the
welcoming.
people.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah.
commit. Yeah, if you are committed, uh, if you are showing your desire to contribute, and then you are committed, you are doing the work as well, uh, people want help. We This is a huge project, and Kubernetes is successful because of its community. That's the only way Kubernetes is running, and it will run. So we need people. So go through that Kubernetes slash community, look for SIGs, look for working groups. These are folders right in the root of the repository. Look for information like what the SIGs working group does. Look for information like their weekly meetings, agendas, sub-project areas of help. Join Slack, join Kubernetes Slack, introduce yourself. And yeah, that should be your first point. For everything else later than after this groundwork, I think that should be your own uh, decision on which area of Kubernetes you want to contribute to. Uh, you can try and many things and then decide on one thing, but it's going to take some time. So make sure make your minds that it's a big project. It's going to take some time to understand what areas of project you like. Just spend that time, get familiar. Osmosis is a big thing that adds into learning. So if you just stay in that community for a long time, just be around people who are working on this, you get familiar with the terminologies they are using day to day, on a day to day basis. So just do that. I think doing that for a 1 month period, for anybody who is just starting like right today, it is going to make a lot of difference. So do that. And then there are people in the community, there are organized opportunities, there are mentorship programs running in the community. Not just release team is one of the popular ones right now, but I just want to highlight that release team application is not the only way to get started. There are other opportunities as well. Not maybe some are like group mentorship programs, some are 101. We don't usually encourage 101 now that community is growing so much, and it's hard to provide 101 mentorship. So find out what's already there, find out what's coming, use make use of those opportunities as well. But if you I think personally those structured projects programs are very good to get started with if you find those opportunities. But if not, then don't feel like you have to wait for one of those opportunities to come. Just get started, just do your do whatever we have just discussed, and then go back to people, showing your commitment, showing whatever you have done, and providing them more information on what you really want out of them. And people are happy to help, people are really happy to help. um, yeah, that's what I'll tell anyone
Yeah.
who is.
Thank you for your insights, and you have been really inspiring a lot of folks. So, congratulations for this new release and work you are doing to the community. So, thanks for being part of this podcast. I'm really happy to have you. There is always lot to cover, but yeah, we have left with a lot of things. So, don't no mind. Like in the future, if we got a chance, we will surely invite Priyanka again, and we will try to cover in depth about what actually works around the Kubernetes contributions and release cycles, how the release works, and how the shadow applications works. There are a lot to cover, but we don't have that much time. She's too busy. So don't worry. Thank you for joining this podcast. Yeah, Priyanka, you want?
I just will say one last thing. We did not get time to cover everything, but
Yeah,
please look for resources. There are resources there out there on internet, on YouTube. A lot of great talks are there from KubeCon. So start from there, and then we can always come back to all these platforms like Slack and maybe discuss any specifics if anyone is looking for any uh, specific advice to move ahead. So yeah, with that, I'll stop. And thank
yeah,
you for
yeah.
inviting me to the podcast.
Thank you, Priyanka. So yeah, as you mentioned, so there are a lot of cloud native noise kind of a tracks in the KubeCon and other conferences. So definitely watch their talks. They are giving some brush ups on these things. So yeah, thank you for having this. Thank you for having us. Sorry, joining us, Priyanka, and hope you like this podcast, audience. So definitely give the like, share, and subscribe if you like that, and definitely share with the folks. We don't much care about the subscribe, but yeah, definitely share with other folks who want to learn about Kubernetes and getting into this open source and cloud native world.